the Buddha, and Confucius. It is, however, the task of every UU to be their own Buddha, their own Jesus, their own Confucius. It is a cornerstone of our religion that each of us is the author of their own life experience, and through the practice of compassionate mind, we can heal our bodies, our minds, our spirits, and our planet. It is our work as a community to walk with each other along the spiritual pathways that lead towards happiness, compassion, and life fully lived. And while we are a safe harbor where there is solace and healing, we are also a launching pad from which we are propelled into the tumult of life to live courageously, justly, and lovingly. In this sacred place, we create the structures that lift up the downtrodden, set the captives free, and heal the brokenhearted. We have learned that to be fully human is to be fully divine, that with a little help from our friends, we can each tell our own unique story. So today, we celebrate the power of the feminine, and to do that, we have several women from the congregation speaking. Laurie, Candace, and Beth are going to share women from their tradition, are women that they know that have had an impact on their lives.
I'm not a writer, but we light this challenge for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the fire of commitment that women bring to this world. As the chalice shines, may it inspire us to seek knowledge and challenge assumptions.
Thank you, Patrice. How many of you guys here like it when your mom hugs and kisses you? How many people? Yeah. Okay. How many adults here like hugs and kisses? Okay, quite a few of the adults. I think the hugs and kisses win the day. Here's a story that comes from a long time ago called the Lysistrata. And it's a story that took place in ancient Greece. And there were two cities, well, there are more than two cities, but the two main cities that were fighting things out, they were at a war. Can anyone, adults, tell the kids which two cities were at war? And Athens and Sparta. Yep. Okay. Wait a minute, honey. No. Okay. I think we had an answer there. But anyway, so Athens and Sparta were at war. But you know, the soldiers, the wives of the soldiers, got very tired of all the fighting, because you know what happened when there's war? The men go away, and they sometimes stay away for a long time, and sometimes they don't come back at all because they're hurt or they're killed in battle. So there was this woman who got the idea. She said to herself, wait a minute, I don't like war very much, so I'm going to tell my husband that no more hugging and kissing until you guys stop fighting. And you know what? It worked. No more hugging and kissing. The men decided that they were not going to have their war anymore. Now, the reason I tell that story is that because lots of times women in society don't have as much power as men, and have to use ways to intervene to make a better society that aren't necessarily as straightforward as they could be, although that's a pretty straightforward way. So at any rate, how many people here are for hugging and kissing then? Everybody, 100% maybe for hugging and kissing? Okay, good. So you guys can go to class. Thank you. We'll sing you out. Born into slavery in 1797, Isabella Baumfree, who later changed her name to Sojourner Truth, would become one of the most powerful advocates for human rights in the 19th century. Her early childhood was spent in New York, on a New York estate owned by a Dutch American named Colonel Johannes Hardenberg. Like other slaves, she experienced the miseries of being sold and was cruelly beaten and mistreated. In 1827, after her master failed to honor his promise to free her or to uphold the New York anti-slavery law of 1827, Isabella ran away. After experiencing a religious conversion, Isabella became an itinerant preacher, and in 1843 changed her name to Sojourner Truth. During this period, she became involved in the growing anti-slavery movement, and by the 1850s, she was involved in the women's rights movement as well. At the 1851 Women's Rights Convention held in Akron, Ohio, Sojourner Truth delivered what is now recognized as one of the most famous abolitionist and women's rights speeches in American history, Ain't I a Woman? She continued to speak out for the rights of African Americans and women during and after the Civil War. Sojourner Truth died in Battle Creek, Michigan in 1883. Now here's her speech read by Joanne, who became a huge fan of Sojourner when helping her daughter Lois reach Sojourner's life for a school project. Joanne?
Well, children, where there is so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. I think twixt the Negroes of the South and the women at the North, all talking about rights, the white men will be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me any best place. And ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could head me. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man when I could get it, and bear the lash as well. And ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children and seen most all sold off to slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman? Then they talk about this thing in the head. What's that they call it? Intellect. That's it, honey. What's that got to do with women's rights or Negroes' rights? If my cup won't hold but a pint and yours holds a quart, wouldn't you be mean not to let me have my little half measure full? Then that little man in black back there, he says women can't have as much rights as man because Christ wasn't a woman. Where did your Christ come from? Where did your Christ come from? From God and a woman. Man had nothing to do with him. If the first woman God made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, these women here together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. And now they is asking us to do it. The men better let them. Obliged to you for hearing me, and now old Sojourner ain't got nothing more to say.
I mean, I did not know I was going to have to follow Sojourner Truth right now. That's a tough act to follow. And I want to say, we were in Battle Creek just walking around one day, and I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a humongous, 30-foot bronze statue of Sojourner Truth there, and information about how she settled there and lived there the rest of her life. So that is worth seeing. It's really something. Jim asked if I talk about a famous Jewish heroine, and of course I thought of famous people and biblical heroines and such. But then he said you could talk about a Holocaust survivor, and then I thought, yes, I know many Holocaust survivors. There are very few left at this point in time. But I immediately knew I should talk about my friend Marilyn's mother. My friend Marilyn, we met in 9th grade, so we've been friends almost 50 years. We're still very close. But it's interesting, as teenagers, I really did not know that her mom and her grandparents who lived with them, who I knew very well, were survivors. I mean, I knew they were from Hungary because they had delightful accents, but otherwise they just seemed to be, regular family as far as I could tell. Marilyn's mom and grandparents were always very cheerful and just a lot of fun. Their eyes twinkled. They loved to tease me about my red hair, and they seemed to always be laughing. So it was pretty surprising to me to actually learn their story. I had some pictures, the ones of the little girl, the old ones. I have some, Marilyn sent me some photos of her mom. Oh, this one, first of all, is Erica, the mom, who's a Holocaust survivor on the right, obviously. On the left is my friend Marilyn. In the middle is the granddaughter, who is pregnant. So 4 generations in that photo. As most Holocaust survivors who are alive right now, almost 80 years after World War II, Erica was a child during the Holocaust. She was born in 1932 in Budapest. When she was 5 months old, Adolf Hitler rose to power in Germany. For much of World War II, she was just a shopkeeper's daughter, growing up peacefully in fairly integrated Budapest. That's her little girl, her as a little girl, maybe 5 or 6. And then there's another one too of her just a bit older. That's her school uniform. These were before the war, or before the Nazis came. Because Hungary was an ally, Germany did not invade until 1944 when Erica was turning 12. Then her life changed dramatically. The Nazis immediately began requiring all Jews to wear gold stars, forcing them into ghettos, waging death marches, and deporting them to concentration camps. Right away, they took all the able-bodied men, including her father, to work camps. Erica said she wasn't scared she wouldn't see her dad again, believing it would all blow over. I mean, it was so hard for people to believe what was happening, even as it was happening right before their eyes. But soon Hungary was completely occupied by the Nazis. She said things were closing in and getting worse and worse. People were disappearing. I knew then that I could be killed any minute, but I still didn't think I would be. Her mother, on her own now, found creative ways to survive. She got jobs for herself and Erica in a factory making German uniforms. The workers slept on the uniforms at night. Her mom also wrangled a fake visa for her husband so that he wouldn't be deported. But on December 1st, 1944, Nazis began a mass deportation of the Jewish population in Budapest. They came to the factory where Erica and her mom were working and put everyone on trucks to take them to Germany. My mother did not want to be taken away. She knew we were in danger. Her main thought was not to be taken away in those trucks, Erica said. When it started to get dark, the trucks stopped for the night, and the Nazis ordered everyone to stay inside. At this point, her mother's courage and strength were put to the test. She knew this was their moment to escape, and she indicated to Erica to watch and follow her. When she saw the opportunity, she quickly winked at Erica, hopped off the truck, motioning for Erica to follow. They managed to vanish into the crowd, and eventually they found refuge with a former housekeeper. The housekeeper hid them till the end of the war. They later learned that the 300 women and children on those trucks with them were taken to Auschwitz concentration camp crematorium and immediately murdered. In 1945, the Russians liberated Budapest. 3 days later, Erica and her mother reunited with her father. They eventually learned that about 45 of their relatives had been killed in the Holocaust. So can I have that picture with several people? I didn't with like old men. Damn. Okay. Well, I made copies because I wasn't sure if that would work. But this was, it's hard to see, I'm sure. But this was Erica as a little girl, pre-war. These are her four uncles and her aunt and her little cousin. And all of them were killed in the Holocaust. So what do you say about that? So, after emigrating to the U.S. in 1950, Erica was really surprised to see another kind of persecution in the U.S., racism. She said, "It blew my mind that we came to a country that is for liberty and their own people are treated the way they are. We traveled through the South and people had to explain to me about the different water fountains and bathrooms for the different races. I was shocked." Once they settled in the United States in Ohio, she learned English, graduated from high school and college, and then worked as a medical technician until her retirement. Aside from spending time with her 2 children, 4 grandchildren, and 2 great-grands, she hasn't slowed down at all. She's 90 years old, and she's a sought-after speaker about the Holocaust. Now she travels throughout the country with the mission of making sure the Holocaust is not forgotten, to fight racism, hatred, and persecution of those who are different from you. I think there might be a couple more. Yeah, okay. She's just very well-respected speaker on the topics. And I have to say, I've known a lot of Holocaust survivors, and they don't all do this. People have obviously different reactions. She's just really taken it as her obligation to go around and speak to people. She said, "I'll speak to anyone, anytime, wherever." Many years after World War II, she revisited Hungary, and one of the main things she noticed as she rode the trains throughout the countryside is how close the villages and houses are to the train tracks. As Jews were being taken to the concentration camps by train, they went right past these houses. She realized that people had to know what was going on, but they pretended not to. And this is one of the main messages she tries to convey when she's speaking. Don't close your eyes to injustice or you become part of the problem. This is what makes hate crimes, racism, and atrocities possible. Average people seeing what's happening, but saying and doing nothing. On a practical level, she advocates the importance of voting, but not just voting. She's very big on do your research about the candidates. Know before the election what people stand for. And she says vote for every election, school board judge down to the most local positions, because all elected officials have power, whether in small or large ways, and they can have a profound impact. She believes that maybe if people were better educated about Hitler and what he stood for, he wouldn't have risen to power as he did. From my observations, Erica and her parents always seemed so optimistic and hopeful, even after all they'd been through. And I think these traits are things that really help them survive and persist in the face of these incredible odds, and also contributed to them being able to be resilient and feel that there was a sense of life was worth living even after the war and what they'd seen. Erica is grateful for and enjoys every single day, a lot like our Gloria. She never forgets how lucky she was to escape the Holocaust with her life and with her immediate family intact. And she lives her life to the absolute fullest. Thank you.
So the person I chose, the woman I chose to feature today is Miriam from the Old Testament. She was Moses' sister. And it's somebody that I haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about, and it was interesting to research her. She's a portrait of courage, deep family connections, leadership, and a faithful life. Miriam was born in 1576 BC and is the daughter of Amram and Jochebed, and the sister of Moses and Aaron. She was described as a prophetess and, in fact, is one of the 7 major female prophets in the Bible. A loving sister. We are first introduced to Miriam as she and her younger brother, Aaron, welcome a new baby boy, Moses, to the family. It is believed that Miriam was around 5 years old when Moses was born. Unfortunately, Moses was born during a time that a decree was in effect demanding that all Hebrew baby boys be killed. Miriam had parents with strong faith, however, and trusted God. Her mother was able to hide Moses for 3 months, but when she no longer could hide him safely, similar theme here, isn't it? She knew she needed to find a way for him to escape Pharaoh's wrath. She took a papyrus basket, coated it with tar and pitch to make it waterproof, placed Moses in the basket, and hid it in the reeds along the bank of the Nile River. Exodus 2:1-4 is where that talks about that. Soon after, Pharaoh's daughter, Bitya, went down to the river to bathe and retrieve Moses in the basket. Miriam, who stood watching, courageously stepped forward and offered to find a Hebrew woman to nurse the baby for her. Miriam ran to tell her mother, and Moses' very own mother was compensated to nurse him and care for him until he was weaned. As time went on, Miriam witnessed the great miracles God performed through Moses. When Moses parted the Red Sea and throngs of Israelites escaped from Egypt, she was a part of the whole experience. She looked back after passing through and watched as the chariots and Pharaoh's armies were swallowed into the sea. Next thing you know, there was great rejoicing and singing on the other side of the Red Sea. And the song known as the Song of Moses, which I always thought was just called the Song of Moses, but it actually is called the Song of Moses and Miriam, was written in praise and worship to God for redeeming the Israelites. And here's where I've started feeling a connection, because she was leading these throngs of people, I would like to imagine, in song and dance. It is found in Exodus 15, the Song of Moses and Miriam. While we don't find much scripture surrounding Miriam in the role of prophetess, she is described, along with her brothers, Moses and Aaron, as delivering the Jews from slavery in Egypt. So I'd like to think she had equal recognition. I brought you up out of Egypt and redeemed you from the land of slavery. I sent Moses to lead you, also Aaron and Miriam. That's in Micah. She is mentioned as prophetess in Exodus and in Numbers as well. She was a teacher, which that's a career that I have had for many years. It is believed that Moses taught the men the Torah. Miriam led the women and taught them too. We know that Miriam was strong in her faith, and according to Hebrew tradition, women passed their faith on to their children. We also surmise from biblical scholars that Miriam taught other women about the Torah, which I kind of never thought about that. I always figured it was the men teaching in the temples and whatever. The well of Miriam. Miriam was struck with leprosy, which then I'm sure affected her attitude and her outlook on life. She lived for another 38 years and is not mentioned again until she died, never reaching the promised land. She's believed to be around 130 years old at the time of her death. In Numbers 20, we read about Miriam's death, and immediately following, we read that the Israelites have no water. So this is a quote. In the first month, the whole Israelite community arrived at the desert of Zin, and they stayed at Kadesh. There Miriam died and was buried. Now there was no water for the community, and the people gathered in opposition to Moses and Aaron. Bible scholars make the correlation between Miriam's death and the lack of water and come to the conclusion that for 40 years prior, when they were wandering in the wilderness, they had consistent water to the credit of Miriam. They believe that Miriam's death caused the well to dry up. Hebrew experts point out that the Talmud explains that Miriam, Aaron, and Moses were responsible for the three gifts that the Jews had in the desert: the well of water, the pillar of clouds, and the manna. Miriam's well is the name the Hebrews gave to the spring that provided water throughout the 40 years that they traveled in the wilderness. And I guess my question is that well still there? Lessons that one might learn from Miriam. Have courage, be a leader, thank God. Have courage. For a little girl, only 5 years old, Miriam displayed incredible courage when she approached the Pharaoh's daughter about finding someone to nurse baby Moses. Can you imagine her boldness? Psalm 27 tells us, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" Be a leader. Miriam taught women about God, and after being delivered out of slavery, led the women in song and music. She was a leader. She was someone that others wanted to be around and follow. Leaders don't sit back and watch. Miriam didn't just accept that her brother would float down the Nile to uncertain circumstances. Instead, she watched and took action, even in the face of fear. We know that Miriam was strong in her faith, and according to Hebrew tradition, women passed their faith on to their children. We surmise that Miriam taught other women. I guess that was a typo error. I already said that. Finally, thank God for each and every blessing and trial you have. When we look at the Song of Moses and Miriam, we see it is filled with specific reasons for thanksgiving and praise. When praying, be specific. Thank God for the roof over your head, the food you have to eat, the health of your family and friends. Thank Him also for the difficulties that you face in life.
So I'm speaking about a woman from the UU tradition. For those of you who are totally new to the UU community, we are the product of a merger of two previously separate Christian-based churches. Early Unitarians did not hold Universalist beliefs, and early Universalists did not hold Unitarian beliefs. Universalists preached universal salvation or the absence of hell, and the Unitarian Church preached the unitary nature of God and the absence of original sin. But beginning in the 19th century, the theologies of the two groups started to become more similar, and both churches had always promoted freedom of religion, which contributed to UUism today being a mix of many faiths and spiritual worldviews. Now, there have been many influential Unitarians and Universalists alike, including but certainly not limited to Abigail Adams, Louisa May Alcott, Clara Barton, Olympia Brown, Margaret Fuller, Lucy Stone, and Beatrix Potter. The Universalist Church was the first American, and I'm pretty sure this is true, I'm not 100% certain, the first American denomination to ordain women back in the 19th century. Is that correct? Do you know, Jim?
It sounds true.
Most of my stuff I tried to verify. This was just from Wikipedia. So, So yeah, we do know that Olympia Brown preached as a universalist minister in the 1850s. Can you turn my mic down just a little?
It's up fairly high.
Can you turn it down? We're pretty loud. Okay. There have been many well-known abolitionists and suffragettes among the members, including the woman I want to highlight today. Harriet Kezia Hunt was born in Massachusetts in the early 1800s. She and her sister set up first a school and then a medical practice based out of their home. They studied with Dr. Richard Mott and his wife Elizabeth, who together practiced what might be called holistic medicine nowadays. They practiced a form of medicine that was quite different for its time, focusing on healthy eating, exercise, mental health, and herbal remedies as a way to wellness, rather than the strong chemical treatments, bloodletting, and other practices common among doctors in that time. Harriet especially wanted women physicians to be available to treat women, and in her home-based practice, she treated women almost exclusively. She also ran classes to teach women healthy living practices and mental health. In 1847, Harriet applied to the Harvard Medical School, and her application was denied. In 1850, another female doctor, Elizabeth Blackwell, became the first woman to achieve a medical degree from Geneva College. At that point, Harriet tried again. This time, the school trustees did allow her to apply and said she could attend lectures. However, 2 African-American men had also been admitted at the same time, and there ended up being such a general sense of outrage among students and staff that Harriet had to remove her admission. So she never attended lectures. She later wrote about her attempt to enroll at Harvard. When civilization is further advanced and the great doctrine of human rights is acknowledged, this act will be recalled, and wondering eyes will stare, and wondering ears will be opened at the semi-barbarism of the middle of the 19th century. So that's what's happening here. However, despite her lack of a degree, she continued to practice successfully for the rest of her life. She also was a fierce supporter of the abolition, women's rights in general, and women's suffrage in particular. She helped create and support several groups dedicated to providing financial and moral support to female medical students once they did begin to be admitted in the second half of the century. She was granted an honorary degree from the new Female Medical College of Philadelphia in 1853. She continued both her medical practice and her reform activities until her death. Before her death, Hunt commissioned a life-size statue of Hygeia, the Greek goddess of health, from African-American sculptor Edmonia Lewis. The sculpture now marks her grave in the Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Now, Hunt's campaign to enfranchise women attracted widespread public hatred. There was often hissing, yelling, and stamping, and all manner of unseemly interruptions, recalled one reporter during the annual Women's Rights Convention in New York, especially when Hunt invoked the Declaration of Independence to demand the franchise. Newspapers regularly criticized her as a strong-minded woman who stoked hatred and violated God's truth when she promulgated women's rights mania. So that is our UU woman of focus today.